Now I realize we have been at this for some time already, but at the risk of derailing the dialogue you initiated, and may I just say how thrilled I am that you did, Karkat, I would just like to qualify my entire analysis of your alternative culture by saying that in contrast with life on before us, while your people may have been engaged in violent, lethal class struggle for millions of sweeps, by no means does this imply that the before way of life was entirely without problematic elements. Perhaps even more disturbing and insidious for their lack of acknowledgement and open discussion, particularly as a consequence of what in my view are widely and dismayingly unexamined systemic social injustices resulting from the entrenched power dynamics in play. Dynamics strikingly similar to those of your planet has markedly more bellicose iteration, which has only served to fully vindicate my hypothesis that such a hierarchy is really predicated on intrinsic dysfunction, and the failure to shift all unusual narratives and undiagnosed problems into an open, judgment-free discourse through which problematic issues are constructively channeled into more intelligently problematized avenues of discussion. Now, before I continue, it is only decent of me to warn you about certain triggers that are surely ahead in this essay. The main conversation. Triggers include but likely will not be limited to class oppression, colon violence against girls, luscious abuse, complimentary and analogous hate speech, gay fooling, slurries and other concupiscent flutings, like span shamming, babel and STCs, prolix dissertation and... Great, it sounds like you don't have any triggers, at least none that you know about. I will proceed with caution nevertheless. Just please let me know if you start feeling triggered by anything I am saying, and we can take a brief time out while you summon your memorial to help pacify you, assuming you have one. Not that I am presuming you do, but I heard that you did. Is that correct? If not, I apologize. I further apologize if your orientation precludes the possibility as a pale romantic, fat quadrant romantic, something in a great pale sexual department or such, and hopefully you are not triggered by such presumptuous conciliatory normative language. I am glad I brought up the subject of an examined privilege, because it dovetails beautifully with the point I was about to make regarding buffer society and its savage umbral potentiality, which later manifested through the kind of alternative brutality you are all too familiar with. Those in the higher echelons of the human spectrum, such as the Ceruleans, or blue bloods, careful, being loose with such terminology is opening the floodgates to a whole host of toxic ST language and homophobic skies when addressing the challenges faced by those lower on the spectrum, such as the mid-usual and particular one cast like umpers, ochres, or rust bloods, and others. Highly problematic, deeply offensive and triggering terminology, strongly imploring you steer clear of this type. They would be well advised to check their cerulean privilege, particularly before dismissing hardships or marginalizing claims of oppression, which can be difficult for them to identify or empathize with from their advantageous position within the different/alternative power structures. Dovetail problematic power structures toxic sickness language. And some may argue that in our peaceful utopian culture that we have freed ourselves from injustice and disparities and privilege in a post-scarcity economy, largely equal rights distributed across the human spectrum, and therefore exist in a post-spectral world laughed out loud, and therefore there is no need to champion important social causes and there is nothing left to debate. But really nothing could be further from the truth. You just need to educate yourself and carefully investigate the long-standing power dynamics in play. For instance, a seemingly harmless remark from a cis-blooded cerulean toward a number, God forbid, burgundy or yes, even a one identifying physically cooler cast about their very long-term future plans, such as on the order of centuries. And this may prove to be a very hurtful microaggression due to the fact that low youths cannot possibly live it that long themselves, and the more privileged caste could easily outlive dozens of generations of mid-use or hundreds of generations of boys, Burgundy, and grains. No, please avoid describing the Lodomus slime bloods as it has historically been used as an especially vicious epithet. Such remarks can find that trip a painful reminders of Akula castes, to some extent just, but Sikhs and royal verses in particular, have been able to use their tremendous lifespans over the millennia to gain a stranglehold over, have been able to completely dictate our societal evolution by ensuring only their cultural agendas and narratives receive the dialogue as air supply, assuring the codification of those resultant ideals and deciding which normalcy entails, and sadly these absolutes become internalized across the full spectral range, even within those of most compromised privilege. And so you begin to see the cyclical nature of the dysfunction and the resulting inertia against positive change and raising awareness of the most and the problematized issues, which I think we can agree is pretty problematic. As most spectral world as low hash buoys of so jazz as real verses as narratives as agendas as narratives. And really, it's everyone's business to examine their privilege, even Burgundies, who may be subject to the pitfall of believing incorrectly there are none on a scale beneath whom they enjoy certain privileges over, which off-spectrum trolls will never know, such as those identifying as other bloods or caste multiples, poly-blooded, any globally ideas of having a caste which manifests nowhere is yet known in anyone physically, or for that matter off-specs who physically do possess such a blood kind, or mutants. Very problematic, highly triggering to some, B1, such as you and I, Karkat, but this puts us both in a situation which to our knowledge uniquely allows us to understand and empathize with tragically and the privileged and empowered groups across all scuttles of life, thus affording us both what I like to call a uniquely and the privilege, which, yes, is a kind of privilege we should both strive to check as well whenever we can. This same uniquely and privileged perspective of I'm sure you know was disadvantaged upon my post-scratch iteration as well, and while I have no doubt you justifiably came to reveal that figure of your planet's rich history and your personal lineage, and while his goals of peace, equality, and a truly spectrate blind society, I am afraid I personally have trouble condoning his methods. I don't like to use the term problematic lightly, but well, his tactics were nothing if not massively problematic, to say the least, employing violent uprising to effect change, and emblazoning his mark upon history and his faithful followers with the salty flourish of a single rule, shouted swear word. It's not to my taste even though he is who I would have grown up to be in another life. But no, I prefer to effect social change through rational, honest discourse and contributing to ongoing dialogues, focusing on what should be the real goals, through keen adherence to the discipline of problematics, ensuring that we stay focused on successfully problematizing a wide range of dialogue and the complicated social dilemmas. Hash the complication, hash salty flourish, hash root shout, it's swear word, dash spectrate blind society. It's nice to see we agree on so much. Maybe we are not so alike, despite our drastically different upbringings. Anyway, as I was saying, the story of your ancestor, and more importantly my exhaustive list of misgivings with his approach to social change, is quite a long and elaborate one, but it actually fits brilliantly within the larger mosaic which captures the broad strokes of my post. Our discussion. Trigger warnings for the following content include ancestor bashing, faith shamming, loud swearing, torture, burn wounds, ship sinking and again. Seriously, just let me know if you begin to feel triggered by anything, even slightly. We will pause and see if we can really explore those issues and identify exactly how I may have invalidated your struggles. Without further ado, the story is as follows. #TW #ancestor bashing #shaman #swearing #torture #guns #ship sinking #struggles.